Ladies and gentlemen, holy shit. Over the last 2 days, we've had a whirlwind circus of craziness in the Supreme Court. Starting Thursday with the overturning of the New York gun carry laws, and today with the overturning of Roe v. Wade. Uh, Something I never thought I'd see in my lifetime. So today, we're going to do both of them, but today we're going to start with Roe v. Wade, because this one I think has got more people talking than anything else. This is some craziness. So for those of you who are young and learning, or those of you who don't really know a whole lot of background on it, you just know the basic principle of what's going on. Roe v. Wade was decided back in January of 1973, January 22nd to be exact. The Supreme Court ruled in a majority ruling that the 14th Amendment protected, under the privacy portion of the 14th Amendment, it protected a woman's right to privacy and having an abortion without really too much interference. It was determined that it was a right protected under the Constitution, but it was not absolute. And the reason that they were very clear and specific that it was not absolute is because they felt the need to balance the well-being of the mother while also still trying to protect the prenatal body. So you fast forward to today, Friday, June 24th, 2022, and it gets crazy. This whole ordeal came before the Supreme Court because of the Dobbs versus Jackson's Women Health Organization. And they were challenging a 2018 Mississippi law that bans abortions after the 15-week period. In a majority vote, the Supreme Court determined today that the U.S. Constitution does not protect the right to abortion. What does this do? It takes it from a federally governed entity. It takes it from a federally governed property or right or law, rule of law, and bumps it down to the states to allow them to make their own individual state-by-state decision on how they want to govern abortions. What does this mean? Right now, in the immediate, all it does is change whether or not it's determined as a right. No one has, at this point, has lost any rights or freedoms, as they're putting it. It does open the door for certain states to pass sweeping legislation that will outright ban abortions. And that is what a lot of people on one side of the argument, obviously the pro-life, the pro-choice people, their argument is they're going to take away a woman's right to choose, and it's their body, their choice, and that's how they feel about it, and that's their stance. On the other side, the pro-life side is ecstatic about this ruling because what does it do? It protects the unborn fetus, which in their eyes, the argument is it's murder. And that is what everybody's clashing over, right? The gist of it. Who thinks that their ethical conundrum is more important or more right or more ethical, whatever the case may be. So I didn't just come here to educate you on Roe v. Wade and the decision today. Obviously, I'm here to give my 2 cents on it. And this is where the follower count's gonna either explode or cut in half, depending on how you feel about it. In general, I am vehemently against abortions, in the general sense. I think it has become predominantly, a large portion of it has become about birth control. And it's a means that plenty of people use as a resolution to their error. And it is a birth control method, and that's it. And that's a problem for me. People like to argue that, life, just because it's a couple cells doesn't mean it's life. But meanwhile, bacteria and other things that have less cells than a developing fetus has, those are considered living, breathing, or living things. So no, I disagree with your argument about when the life begins and when it's murder, when it's not. flat out, I agree in general, abortion is murder. I do agree with conservatives and pro-lifers on that. Where I lose most conservatives is I don't believe and I don't feel that there needs to be an outright ban on abortion. I think that is a grave injustice. And I think that's the biggest part of what a lot of these pro-choice are screaming about. At least on the surface, that's what they're screaming about, is the pro-choice aspect, you know, the mother's health, the women's health. And they don't look at it as the baby has developed enough, or the fetus has developed enough to be considered a living thing. So their health is not something we factor into it, or their livelihood. So I do believe strongly that there needs to be, abortions shouldn't be used as just birth control, but I also believe strongly that there are certain circumstances where it is warranted. Rape. I know we're not supposed to use that term on here. Grape is what you're supposed to use so you don't get canceled. Sexual assault. Situations like that, I don't think it's morally correct or morally fair to force a woman who has been sexually assaulted to carry around her attacker's baby and carry it to birth. If you have the strength to do that, kudos to you. Very good. But no one should be forced to do that. Things like incest, I think it's probably a good idea that option still be on the table. If the baby has been determined by medical doctors to have a condition that will give it no real quality of life, essentially if the baby is going to be a clinical vegetable, more power to the parents, again, that have the strength to do that, to deliver that child and take care of that child and raise that child, and the sacrifices they have to make to see that child lives. Fantastic, more power to you. But I don't think that the option to avoid something like that should be taken away from the parents. I don't think that should be the case. And last, but certainly not least, actually, I saved the most important as far as I'm concerned for last, the mother's health. And I'm not talking about some mamby-pamby bullshit fucking doctor diagnosis about, oh, well, yeah. No. When a woman is clinically diagnosed by a doctor as having complications from pregnancy, and it is better than average chances that the mother is going to have serious medical complications and could possibly die from the pregnancy. I don't think that's the correct thing to do. I don't think that's morally and I don't think you can argue that. I don't, conservative, liberal, I don't care. I don't pro-choice, pro-life, I don't care. I don't think you can argue that. If you try, I think personally, and this is just my personal opinion, but I think morally, if you try to argue that a mother who is almost guaranteed to die from childbirth has to keep the baby and carry it to term, I think you're basically saying that this life, but yet unborn life, is more important than the active one that's already living. And I don't think that's correct. I don't think it's fair, and I don't think the government should have the right to tell somebody, yeah, I know this pregnancy is going to kill you, but you got to go through it with it anyway. I think that's morally bankrupt. I think that's a shitty, terrible thing to do. And if you think that that's acceptable, then I don't think very highly of you. So again, I don't think abortion should be completely off the table. I think there should be several circumstances where it should absolutely be acceptable, and it's almost necessary. But I do think that we need to get a tighter rein on it, so it's not just willy-nilly used for birth control just because people made an error. You know, I don't think you should be running around having 9, 10, 11, 12 abortions. I think that's morally bankrupt as well. I don't think that's acceptable, and I don't think that's correct. So, yeah, and I'm sure the comments are going to be flooded with, oh, you don't have a uterus, you don't have a choice. You can fuck off with all that bullshit. If we're going to use the argument that somebody isn't directly affected by this, then they're not allowed to have an opinion, then we could literally apply that to everything. Men's rights, women aren't allowed to have an opinion. Women's rights, men aren't allowed to have an opinion. If you're not a cop, you don't get to have an opinion about how cop things go. If you're not a doctor, you don't get to have an opinion about malpractice things. We don't get to sit here and go, you don't have an opinion because. I don't need to have a uterus to know what I think is right and wrong, and what's morally bankrupt and what's morally correct. I don't need one. So, hope that helps. bring the hate.